I won't let a low-educated man like you date my daughter, a part-time high school graduate. Are you kidding me? I've heard enough about your struggles growing up in a single-parent household. Why don't you just get lost? You're an eyesore." The man in front of me abruptly stood up, grabbed his cup, and splashed its lukewarm contents on me. It wasn't hot enough to burn, but it tore apart the last shreds of my pride. "I'm truly sorry," he muttered, somehow missing those words. I pushed myself up and staggered out of the room. She didn't follow me. Filled with bitterness, I dedicated myself wholeheartedly to working harder. Years later, when I ran into my now father-in-law, who was an attorney, I could have never predicted what would unfold. This is the story of my life's turnaround. My name's Matthew. Currently, I work as a clerk at a law firm due to personal circumstances at home. I graduated from a part-time high school and was hired straight from my part-time job into this law firm. The boss, who knew about my situation, kindly employed me since I had been working part-time there since high school. I owe so much to the boss for taking in someone like me, with just a high school diploma and no significant skills. Now I'm learning various things while working. I'm doing my best to gain skills to be of help to the boss. I come from a single-mother household, and I have a younger brother and sister. I hardly remember my father, but I believe he was a violent man when he drank. He was rarely home and was mostly out drinking, so as a young child, I didn't really know him. My brother and sister probably felt the same. There was a time when my father went on a rampage, and fearing for our safety, we fled our home. From then on, the four of us began living in a small apartment. In hindsight, I guess that's when my parents divorced. We settled in our current place after taking several train rides from our old home. The climate here is mild, and it rarely snows heavily during the winter. Given that my mother had a fragile constitution and often fell ill, this pleasant climate might have been comforting for her. After graduating middle school, I enrolled in a part-time high school to help with household expenses. I took on numerous part-time jobs, working at places like convenience stores, gas stations, coffee shops, and even doing some manual labor like construction. Whenever I heard of a job opportunity, I jumped on it and juggled multiple jobs. One of those jobs was doing odd jobs at this law firm, while my tasks, such as fixing stamps to mail, organizing documents, and sorting printed materials, were fairly simple. The hourly wage was good, and all the colleagues were just wonderful people. Because of this, I truly enjoyed my job and worked hard every day. After high school, I landed a job as a clerk. It was such a blessing. Another unforgettable job I had was at a tea room. It was a quaint little place run by a friend's uncle and boasted an array of teas, making it a hidden gem in the community. The owner's wife, known for her simple homemade baked goods, had an especially popular item: cookies that both my younger brother and sister couldn't get enough of. And in that tea room, I had a destiny-driven encounter. Her name was Alicia. She was my age, a petite girl, and her long black hair was tied back, swaying like a tail when she moved, something I found endearing. With a jittery wariness around her, her calm manner of speaking and radiant smile was downright charming. Her passion for tea was evident as she could talk endlessly about her favorites. I found that side of her so cute, and I quickly fell for her. Alicia turned out to have a soft spot for me too, and soon after we started dating. For both of us, it was our first relationship, our first dates, our first time holding hands. We slowly but surely deepened our bond. Upon graduating high school, I secured a job at a law firm and had to leave my part-time job. Alicia, however, continued to work there while attending a local college. Every time I dropped by the tea room after work, she greeted me with a freshly brewed cup of tea. It became a daily routine for me to escort her to the train station after her shift. She secured a job in the spring of our 4th year together. With both of us stepping into the working world, I proposed to Alicia. My younger siblings had started high school, and my mom found steady work. Our home life was stabilizing, and I started to think about the future. When Alicia accepted my proposal, I was so overwhelmed with joy that I broke down in tears. It felt too good to be true, almost frighteningly so. But our bliss was soon to be tested. Alicia came from what you might call an old money family, with a lineage of politicians and lawyers. Her grandfather had been a city councilman, and her father was a lawyer. Being the only child, she was doted upon. I was taken aback when I found out about her family's prominence, but she reassured me with a laugh, saying it wasn't a big deal. My folks are just overprotective and tend to spoil me. They wouldn't object to anyone I choose to be with. It seems that she talked about me quite often to her folks. Feeling a touch of anxiety, I was heading to her parents' place, even though she assured me it was okay, telling me with sparkling eyes that they always listen with smiles on their faces. Her residence was a large traditional-style home, enclosed by a grand fence in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Though I always dropped her off at the train station, I'd never seen her house before. She'd always turned down my offers to take her home, saying that a car was already coming to pick her up from the station. Seeing the splendor of her house made me reflect on the small apartment I shared with my family. I couldn't help but feel our worlds were so different, intensifying my anxiety. It's old and a bit embarrassing, saying that she walked through the gate, but all I could do was shake my head. The person who greeted me was her mother. Her gentle and warm smile was so much like Alicia's that I could definitely see the family resemblance. "My name's Matthew. Nice to meet you." I bowed and introduced myself. Her mother smiled softly and led the way. "My husband will be a bit late from work. I hope you don't mind waiting for a bit." "Oh, it's all right," I replied. I was led to a traditional living room adorned with beautiful American paintings and what looked like an expensive vase. She served tea for us. The atmosphere around Alicia and her mother was so similar. Both radiated a calm and gentle aura. Suddenly, the sliding door opened, and a stern-looking man walked in. Without saying a word, he took a seat next to the mother. From the way she served him tea without any introduction, I deduced he must be her father. Hello, my name's Matthew." I straightened my back and bowed deeply. However, he just glanced at me and didn't say a word. Confused, I looked at Alicia, and she seemed equally bewildered, shifting her gaze between her father and me. Amid the silence, the first to speak up was the mother. "Matthew, please look up, honey. What's going on?" Trying to mediate the situation, the mother raised her hand to intervene, but the father began to speak. "Was it Matthew? Alicia told me she wanted to introduce you to us. I hope you don't mind, but I did a little digging." "What? What does he mean by digging?" "Well, I can't exactly puff out my chest and boast about my life. I haven't done anything wrong. Committing a crime is totally out of the question." As I was pondering this, Dad let out an exaggerated sigh. "I've heard your family is quite poor. You've even been working part-time jobs to help with the bills," he said. It was the first time anyone had said so bluntly that I was poor. Sure, we aren't rich, but I always thought we lived a typical life. Still, from the perspective of someone from such a prestigious family, I guess my household must seem inferior. Dad continued, "I want Alicia to have a life that's more than just average happiness. That's a parent's heart. Someone broke like you is out of the question." I was deeply shocked by those blatant and malicious words. Seeing my reaction, Dad smirked. It was clear as day that he was trying to corner me even more. "You only graduated from a night high school and didn't even go to college. What kind of job can a high school grad get? What kind of qualifications can you earn? Becoming a lawyer like me? Dream on. I want Alicia to marry a man even more respectable than me. You're not even in the running." Alicia looked as stunned by her dad's words and seemed at a loss for what to say. I was so shocked I couldn't even lift my head. "I won't have my daughter marry an undereducated man like you. Are you making a joke by just graduating from a night school? I've heard enough of your stories about growing up in a single-parent home. Why don't you just scram? You're an eyesore." Dad abruptly stood up, and in his rage, grabbed his teacup and splashed its contents at me. Thankfully, the tea was lukewarm, so I didn't get burned. However, my already fragile pride was now completely shattered. "I'm sorry, I somehow managed to utter those words, forcing my trembling legs to carry me out of the room. She didn't come after me." That night, I received an apologetic message from Alicia. She expressed her apologies and mentioned wanting to meet and talk, but I replied that I couldn't see her again. After being berated like that, I didn't feel I could sit down and have a calm conversation with her. My self-esteem was in tatters, and I felt like anything said to me would just make me feel even more insignificant. I couldn't find a way to measure up to her father. Marriage seemed impossible. In the end, we chose to part ways. Then 10 years flew by. 10 years later, we were both 32. I'm still working at the same law firm. I've gotten my national certification, and the busy days have helped me forget the past. I hadn't been in touch with Alicia since that day. I heard she got a job and moved out of her parents' home. By the 3rd year, she had been transferred out of state. I couldn't bring myself to respond to her messages. Yet, I still can't forget her. I feel I might never be able to love someone else for the rest of my life. Trying to escape those thoughts, I've immersed myself in my work. Matthew, if you were going to the courthouse, could you drop off these documents for me? A senior lawyer called out to me as he was about to leave. Today, I was scheduled to accompany the director to the courthouse at the request of a senior colleague. I readily agreed and took the car keys. The director is like a second father to me. I've been under his wing since high school, so no matter how hard I try, I can't outshine him. He's always smiling and has a great personality, but I heard from a senior colleague that in his younger days he was known as the Demon Nash. Even though I've been working here for 10 years, I'm still at the bottom of the pecking order in the office. That's why, when the director goes out, I often accompany him, acting like a secretary, though it's not really my job anymore. When we arrived at the local court, similar to a county court, I parted ways with the director to deliver some documents a colleague had entrusted me with. These are probably documents for the next trial. Given the rush, today might be the deadline. After submitting the documents, I was heading to the restroom when I spotted a familiar face. I thought I might be mistaken for a moment, but it was a face I couldn't forget. Yet he, seemingly an authority figure, was walking towards me. I tried not to make eye contact and nodded while looking down. But that man, Alicia's father, stopped right in my path. Well, aren't you the overconfident guy who proposed to my daughter despite having no college degree? He sneered. I had hoped he hadn't recognized me, but I was wrong. I remained silent, keeping my head down. What are you doing here? If you're being sued, do you need my help? Someone like you, without an education, probably knows nothing about the law, right? Alicia's father sneered again, suddenly changing his expression. It was a look of pure fury, so sudden that it sent chills down my spine. You said something to Alicia, didn't you? Ever since that day, she stopped listening to me. She was always such a good, obedient girl, but now it's as if she's under a bad influence. I have no idea what you're talking about. I haven't been in touch with Alicia since then. Your accusations make no sense to me. Oh, really? You think you can just brush me off like that? Listen here. Law life's like you can't even hold a conversation with sophisticated people like Alicia and me. Know your place and cower in it. Never show your face around me again. That might be a little difficult for you. A laid-back voice echoed in the area. The person who appeared was Director Nelson. Oh, Mr. Nelson, why are you here? The one who exclaimed in surprise appeared to be Alicia's father's boss. Shocked, he bent forward at a right angle to greet the director. This is a courtroom, right? Isn't it normal for attorneys like us to be here? Director Nelson laughed as he addressed the boss, while Alicia's father looked on in disbelief. Oh, come on. Haven't you also served as the president of the Bar Association? You're a giant in the legal community, aren't you? Well, it's just that I've been around long enough to be known by many. Being an attorney, it's only natural to come to a courtroom, right? More importantly, what's up with our Matthew? Director Nelson gave me a light pat on the shoulder and looked toward Alicia's father. His face was smiling, but his eyes weren't. I knew that look all too well. Having worked alongside him for many years, when he made that face, it usually meant he was upset. Matthew here is my protege. He's a top-notch lawyer. What? A lawyer? But didn't you only graduate from an evening high school? Alicia's father looked at me with an incredulous expression. I simply nodded in confirmation. That was the case 10 years ago, but thanks to Director Nelson's guidance, I was able to become a lawyer. Did you know even someone with just a high school diploma can become a lawyer? I adjusted my suit, revealing my lawyer's badge, but it seemed Alicia's father didn't notice. When I broke up with her a decade ago, seeing how devastated I was, Director Nelson had suggested I study to become a lawyer. You don't necessarily need a college degree to become one. It was a challenging path, but I decided to take it on, thanks to Director Nelson's encouragement and rigorous training. Somehow, I passed the preliminary and bar exams on my first try and completed my legal training to become a lawyer. Director Nelson and my colleagues at the firm were all thrilled and celebrated with me. That was 5 years ago. Matthew has always been exceptional. He passed all his exams on the first go. Since high school, he's been honing his skills with our senior staff here, so he's very hands-on and proactive. I plan on having him as my successor. Hearing Director Nelson's words, I couldn't help but blush. Alicia's father looked at me, clearly taken aback. Oh, by the way, for the upcoming trial, Matthew will be the lead attorney for the plaintiff. I believe you're representing the defendant, aren't you? It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, won't it? Director Nelson said with a sly grin. His villain-like demeanor made me smile too. I've been mentored by this man for over a decade, so there's no way I'm backing down. I'm determined to show I can beat even the best lawyers out there. Seeing our confidence, Alicia's father turned pale. His boss was even trembling. Well, see you around, he muttered. With that, we left the scene. Since then, it had been a whirlwind of preparations for the trial. This time, it was a divorce case. Although mediation was attempted, the husband, the defendant, wasn't satisfied and took the case to court. From our side, the main issues were securing the divorce and claiming alimony. The wife, our plaintiff, was resolute in her desire for divorce and had amassed a lot of evidence pointing to infidelity and domestic violence. The contents of the medical reports submitted were so shocking that I found myself grimacing. I was determined more than ever to win. On the day of the trial, I reassured the anxious plaintiff. Don't worry, you're not fighting this battle alone. But of course, I'm not fighting this alone either. I'm always being helped by my colleagues and staff at the office. That's why I truly believe there are people standing behind me, supporting me. Isn't it the same for you? You've mentioned that your kids, your parents, and even your friends are all cheering you on, haven't you? Let's give it our best shot together. And so we took on the case and came out overwhelmingly victorious. The husband's arguments were all over the place, lacking any sincerity. Using that to our advantage, we were able to win the desired alimony of $30,000. Of course, the wife was granted custody. Child support was set at $1,000 monthly, and a lump sum payment was agreed upon until the child reached adulthood. Everything went as we hoped. After hearing the verdict, the defendant hung his head in dismay. It seemed like Alicia's father was suggesting an appeal, but not wanting to endure any more humiliation. The trial was concluded then. Hey, someone called out as we were leaving the courthouse. I knew there was only one person who would call out like that in such a high-handed manner, and sure enough, it was Alicia's father, glaring at me. Don't get too cocky. So what if you're a lawyer without a proper education? You're never going to make it big. I won't have someone without a degree acting all high and mighty. I admit I don't have the educational background, but is that really necessary to defend someone? What I became a lawyer to do was stand up for the weak. I don't care about climbing the corporate ladder. I can't stand people who oppress those in a vulnerable position, and I certainly won't tolerate those who misuse the power they're entrusted with. Young blood, that's just idealistic nonsense. Maybe, but it's something I believe. A lawyer should never forget it. You insolent man. I can't even deal with you. Alicia's father stormed off. To suffer such a defeat after looking down on his opponent must have been a huge blow to his pride. Reflecting on it, I felt a bit vindicated about my past decisions. A few days later, an unexpected visitor arrived at the office. Alicia. It's been a while. Alicia, still as beautiful as ever, smiled, though she appeared a bit worn out. Alicia came to discuss something about her parents. The clerk, who heard the conversation, informed me of this about her parents. When I asked, Alicia, with tearful eyes, pulled out a few photographs. In them was Alicia's father. The man in the pictures was seen getting intimate with a woman other than Alicia's mother. There were multiple photos, all with different settings and outfits, suggesting potential evidence of infidelity. My dad used to dote on me and my mom, almost smothering us, treating us like birds in a cage. I only realized something was off about 10 years ago. Up until then, I thought it was normal, but something happened that made me realize his thinking was twisted, and I left home. But it seemed like over these 10 years, with me gone, my mom has been even more controlled by him. She rarely leaves the house and spends her days being berated by him at home. She used to love going out, but now she's afraid of upsetting him. Can't we get them divorced? At this rate, my mom will break, Alicia said, becoming too emotional and beginning to sob into her handkerchief. I'm sorry, but without the person directly involved, please, can't something be done? At the clerk's words, Alicia kept bowing her head. In matters of divorce, the person's intent is paramount, and there's limited room for family to intervene. But considering the circumstances, I wanted to help. It's not just because of Alicia, but it's also sort of a professional ethic of mine as an attorney. Can we get your mom on the phone? At my words, Alicia quickly looked up, her eyes now bloodshot, and hurriedly pulled out her cell phone. I can right now. All right then, please go ahead. She then set her phone to speaker mode, and I listened to her mom's voice. The voice, in stark contrast to my memory from 10 years ago, sounded utterly drained. Divorce? I haven't thought about that. Thank you for your concern. But Mom, you see how Dad's behavior is off, right? That's not love. It's just control. I know you've protected me from Dad. I know you held him back when I left home. I promise I'll protect you now, so please, can we run away together? From the other end of the phone, it sounded like Alicia's mother was crying. All I could hear were her sobs, so I spoke up. I'm Matthew. In a tyranny, divorce is extremely challenging. I can't necessarily recommend it. If your husband changes his ways, that would be best. There's no way that's going to happen, Alicia exclaimed. I agree. That person probably won't change their deeply ingrained opinions after all these years. However, if you truly want to run away, it's a different story. If you're too frightened to speak up because of your husband, let me handle it. That's what lawyers are for. I felt Alicia's gaze on me. On the other end of the phone, Alicia's mom gave a small yes. Yes, thank you. With that, I was decided as her representative. Immediately, I had Alicia and her mom evacuate to a hotel out of state because we didn't know what kind of treatment we'd receive. Again, I promptly sent a certified letter to Alicia's dad proposing divorce negotiations. Of course, it included the evidence of infidelity that Alicia had brought. Probably right after he got it, Alicia's father called, furious. What's the meaning of this? Is this some kind of revenge? What have you done? Where are they? This isn't revenge. I've been officially asked by your wife. Those photos were prepared by your daughter. They both don't want to see you anymore, so I made the proposal as a representative. This is a marital issue. We'll settle it between us. You know that's not possible, right? You're a lawyer after all. Then it's court. We'll settle this in court. That's fine with you. You're a respected lawyer. What will happen if your affair and domestic abuse become public? Your reputation will hit rock bottom, right? We have the evidence. Despite this, you still don't want to discuss a divorce settlement? You'd think a lawyer would consider that. But Alicia's father seemed really heated. I'll ask again. Do you want to go to court? To my slow question, a small understood came from the other end of the phone. After that, our demands were almost unconditionally met, and Alicia's parents were able to divorce, though it wasn't made public. There's no smoke without fire, as they say. Alicia's father's affair was exposed in a weekly magazine, and his divorce became public, leading him to lose his influence bit by bit. He was fired from the firm he belonged to and apparently tried to start his own, but it seems it's not going so well. In a profession where trust is everything, you can only say he brought it on himself. Then I started dating Alicia again. She sincerely apologized for something that happened 10 years ago. We decided to rebuild our relationship from a friendship, but I was so touched by her kindness and positivity that I asked her out. Fast forward a year, we were both staring at a piece of paper. This is the most nervous I've ever been. It's okay. I got us 3 copies just in case, Alicia said as I shook from nerves. She pulled out another copy of the same paper that was on the desk. It was a marriage registration form. After all the twists and turns, we decided to get married. I couldn't forget about Alicia for those 10 years, and apparently she felt the same about me. We're both getting on in years, so we decided to make it official sooner rather than later. For our witnesses, we chose the owner of the cafe where we met and Director Nelson. Once it's submitted, we'll officially be a family. Are you sure you want to live with my mom? Alicia asked. We decided to live with her mother. She's slowly been regaining her health since then, but we felt we couldn't leave her alone given her occasional bouts of instability. She's your beloved mom, right? She's just as important to me. Thanks. Don't worry about my family. I've got siblings, and my mom says she's enjoying her life on her own. My mother, who used to be frail, is now in high spirits, going on solo trips and joining local choirs. My brother and sister each have their own families and are living happily. Suddenly, I looked up at the sky. It was a clear day with not a cloud in sight. Being able to submit our marriage registration on such a day, I feel truly blessed. I'm so happy I couldn't help but voice my feelings. I used to struggle just to get by and couldn't really feel happiness. But now I have the person I love right by my side. Everyone around me lives with smiles on their faces, making those tough days seem like a lie. Back then, when Alicia's father scolded me harshly and threw his tea at me, I felt so humiliated and sad. But in a way, I think that experience led me to the life I have now. If I hadn't been so put down then, I might never have aimed to become a lawyer. I might not have put in the effort to get to where I am now. Maybe, in a way, I could even think of him as a benefactor. But still, I can never forgive what he did. You can't always say hard work pays off, but I can definitely say I'm glad I worked hard back then. It might be hindsight, but I'm happy now. Beside me, my girlfriend laughs. I smile back at her and tightly squeeze her hand. Music. Man, I wish a beautiful girl would just fall from the sky right into my life. Saying such an unrealistic and silly thing, I close my young adult novel. With 18 years of reading YA novels under my belt, I can confidently say this stuff, like what happens in young adult novels, just doesn't happen in the real world. My name is Mike. I'm just an average office worker. Lately, my main concern is the boss at work, who I just can't get along with. Hey Mike, I told you to get this report done, but this is your task. Don't backtalk me. It's kind of like that. It feels more and more like he's bullying rather than just not getting along. The boss's name is Steve, if I remember right. He's in his late 50s. I've heard he has a son about my age. Despite holding a respectable position and supposedly fulfilling his role as a father, my impression is that he's both figuratively and literally a small man. For the record, Steve's height is around 5'3", while I'm around 5'5", so I can't really say much about others. Anyway, every time I come into work, getting reprimanded by Steve has become a major stressor. At times like these, I dive into watching TV shows or reading adult novels once I'm home. I've always loved the world of fiction. These days, they have a term called teenage delusion phase. But up until middle school, I truly believed I was someone special. And I never doubted that I'd get a special, beautiful girlfriend. But now, I'm turning 30 this year. The reality is clear. I'm not special or anything, just an average guy. The only regret I might have is not having a girlfriend yet. Most 30-year-olds are either married or at least have a significant other. But on closer thought, maybe I don't even fit that average mold. Maybe being average is actually pretty amazing. Lost in such thoughts, I attempted to escape reality by opening a game app on my cell phone. But just then, a notification pinged. It's rare for me to get messages, and when I checked the sender, it read "Nah," making me jump up. The message said, "Hey, it's been a while. I'm sorry for the sudden request, but Mike, could you pretend to be my boyfriend?" I was taken aback by the unexpected content. Na lived in the mansion right opposite my childhood home, and I've known her since we were in kindergarten. By the way, Nina's father is a real estate tycoon, super rich. So basically, I was being asked to play the role of a boyfriend by the daughter of a CEO, my childhood friend. Confused, I decided to hear her out. She pleaded for help, and begrudgingly, I agreed. A week later, I headed to the train station. Na had specified the location. Even though I've known her since we were kids, I felt a bit nervous. After all, it's been roughly 11 years since I last saw Nina when she moved to New York for college. We had a reunion recently, but she couldn't make it due to her busy work schedule. Nina's 30 now. She must have changed a bit in appearance, I thought. As I was waiting, I heard Mike and saw a woman energetically waving at me. "Sorry, did I keep you waiting?" she asked. "No, not at all." There she was, transformed from a young girl into a full-grown woman. Na looked even more beautiful than before, and my nervousness peaked. "You seem nervous, Mike. Is it because I've gotten more attractive?" she teased. "I'm not nervous. Don't get the wrong idea," I stammered. The nervousness made me behave strangely, but it's true, Na had grown up. However, things like her calling my name from afar and running towards me, or her sparkling smile, remained unchanged from when we were kids. I was anxious about how she might have changed, but I genuinely felt happy to see that my childhood friend was still the same in many ways. "Shall we head to my parents' house?" she asked. "Yeah. Now this is where the real challenge begins. I have to play the role of Nina's boyfriend after all. To briefly explain the situation, as I mentioned earlier, Nina's father is in the real estate business. Recently, he seems to have confided in a close business associate, the CEO of another company, saying, "My daughter just can't seem to get a boyfriend." Then the CEO offered, "Why not look among our employees?" and apparently took the initiative. As it turns out, the department head's son was actively seeking a partner for marriage. After exchanging pictures, the young man seemed quite taken with Na and desperately pleaded for a formal introduction with marriage in mind. That's the story. It's so infuriating when I think about it now. They made this decision without my knowledge. You know, typical of Dad, always meddling like that. Na is pouting her cheeks, and I couldn't help but give her a smile. It's true, Nina's father has always been overly concerned about his daughter. Anyways, we need to deter this match at all costs. "I'm counting on you today," she said. "I'll do my best. You see, my role as Nina's boyfriend is to dissuade this prospective groom." Na was upset that her dad had gone ahead and set up a matchmaking date on his own. However, her dad insisted that if she didn't have a boyfriend, he wanted her to meet the guy at least once, chalking it up to typical parental meddling. Feeling the pressure, Na spontaneously lied, saying she already had a boyfriend. But when her dad questioned who this boyfriend was, she impulsively blurted out my name. Though her dad was quite suspicious, he relayed to the other guy's family that she was taken and suggested calling off the arranged meeting. To their surprise, that guy kept insisting on at least one meeting, making it hard for her dad to decline his persistent requests. Concerned that she might be pursued by the suitor in the future, Na decided the best way to get him to back off was to show him her boyfriend in person. Hence, she came up with this scheme to rope me in. As you've probably figured out by now, I'm about to get dragged into a complete mess. At first, I thought to decline, but then she called and pleaded, "Please, just this once." Over the phone, I felt my cheeks warm up, and I reluctantly agreed. To be honest, even if it's just pretending, the idea of being Nina's boyfriend wasn't all bad. I've been secretly in love with her for the longest time, but I never had the courage to confess. I was scared of ruining our childhood friendship, and every time I saw the grand mansion she lived in right across from my family home, I couldn't help but feel the stark difference between our worlds. So I gave up on my feelings for Na. "Hey, why did you choose me to pretend to be your boyfriend?" I asked, holding on to a faint hope. Na gazed at the scenery and pondered. I couldn't read her expression. "Just felt like it," she said, flashing me a bright smile. "I guess there's no deeper reason to it." I thought, shrugging. There's no way Na would have special feelings for someone like me. After that, We entered Nina's lavish mansion. Her dad was inside. I never would have guessed you two were dating, he commented, his expression a bit stiff. By the way, he doesn't know that I'm just pretending to be her boyfriend. I need to ensure he doesn't find out. Would it be okay if I greet her? I asked. Of course. I think my wife would be pleased as well, he replied. With Nina's father's permission, I went in front of the photograph of her mother and greeted her. Nina's mom passed away due to illness right after Na graduated from high school. I had always known she had health issues, but I was truly shocked when she passed away. She was someone who took care of me since I was young. Whenever I visited their home, I remembered the warm smile of Nina's mom and how she would always welcome me with lots of treats. She was truly a wonderful person. Although I was close to Na's mother, I hardly spoke to her father. He was often busy with work, and I had a somewhat intimidating impression of him. I've heard that after losing his wife, Nana's dad became extremely protective of his daughter. I wonder what will happen if he finds out I'm just pretending to be her boyfriend. While these thoughts raced through my mind, the doorbell rang. Finally, the date she was supposed to meet had arrived. A wave of tension washed over me. Oddly enough, this date knew that Nino would be bringing her boyfriend today. He still wants to persuade Mo, even in my presence. I thought, what an arrogant and persistent guy. He must really not know when to give up. I wondered what he looked like. Just then, the man for the matchmaking date and his father entered the room. To my shock, upon seeing the father, my eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Steve. To my surprise, there stood Steve, my boss at the company, with whom I often clashed. Mike, why the hell are you here? Steve looked just as taken aback. Could it be that Nina's father is close friends with the CEO of my company? Come to think of it, I had heard that the date was a manager's son, and Steve is a manager. I was completely dumbfounded by this unexpected encounter. No way! You're the boyfriend of this lady? You've got to be kidding, Steve exclaimed, his eyes bulging in disbelief. But then Na, standing beside me, suddenly grabbed my arm. It's true. Mike is my dear boyfriend, she told Steve with a serious tone and earnest eyes. It must be an act, but her convincing expression made my heart skip a beat. Then Steve's son said, so he's Na's boyfriend. Glaring at me, his eyes mirrored the condescending look I often received from Steve, making me recoil involuntarily. He had clearly inherited his father's shorter stature. After that, Steve's son began to talk about his own background. Apparently, he worked for a company with a higher income than the one both his father and I worked for, and seemed to have a promising future. It felt like I was the one out of place in the situation. For a moment, I felt disheartened. However, Na never let go of my arm. Please reconsider. Mike is my subordinate, but honestly, he's quite useless. Steve's words stung. I bristled, but Na seemed even more upset. Don't you dare insult my boyfriend. Mike has many wonderful qualities. Na, who had been reserved till then, glared fiercely, leaving Steve and his son taken aback. It seems Na really loves him, Steve's son said, suddenly looking very uncomfortable. Excuse me, he added, and left the house. Hey, wait, Steve called after him. As he did, he turned to me, giving me a warning glance. Remember this. I had a bad feeling about all this, and just then, Na finally let go of my arm. I'm sorry for holding on for so long, she said. Oh, it's okay. Seeing Nina's face turn red made me blush as well. Do you two plan on getting married? Na's father suddenly asked, catching me off guard. Na looked equally unsure about how to respond. Seeing our flushed reactions, Na's father just said, never mind, and shrugged. It was my idea to bring up this matchmaking meeting. I'll apologize to the other party properly. With that, he went into his study. Thanks for playing the role of my boyfriend today. I'll treat you to something next time. Because we couldn't risk being overheard, we stepped outside. After walking for a bit, Nina turned to me again to express her gratitude. No worries. Well then, bye for now. Even if it was just for a day, being Nina's boyfriend felt nice. It felt like my long-held crush was momentarily reciprocated. Yet there was a lingering sense of regret. Maybe I still do have feelings for Na. I glanced back in the direction Na had gone and shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. The pretend relationship ends here. A few days later, at the office, Steve glared at me with fierce eyes. I felt a negative vibe, but to add to my surprise, I received a sudden job transfer notice. To my shock, the new location was in a rural branch. This was essentially a demotion. "Hey Steve, what's the meaning of this?" I asked. Steve smirked. "You embarrassed my son and me the other day. I always thought you weren't suitable for this department, so I took the opportunity to send you where they're short-staffed." With that, he laughed heartily. Apparently, several employees had recently quit at that branch, and they were in dire need of staff. Steve had strongly recommended me for the position, so I was pretty much forced into this demotion. Darn it, why did this happen to me? No matter how unfair it felt, the decision was irreversible. Some days later, I was using my weekend break to prepare for the move. Even with the relocation allowance, moving expenses really hurt. As I lamented the situation, I ran out of packing tape. Stepping outside to buy more, I noticed a sleek black car parked in front of my old apartment. Wait, that car looks familiar. Oh, that's Nina's family's car. Just when I thought that, Na stepped out of the backseat of the car, waving with a cheerful, "Hey there." "Na, what are you doing here?" I asked. "Well, I heard some unsettling rumors, so you're being transferred to the countryside, right, Mike? How did you?" It turns out she had received a call from the guy she was supposed to meet for a matchmaking date, who told her with a laugh, "Your boyfriend's getting transferred. Serves him right." Hearing that, she rushed over to see me. "I see. That guy's a piece of work. Sorry to get you involved in all of this." "Why are you apologizing, Mike? It's my fault I lied about having a boyfriend and dragged you into this." Na bowed her head apologetically. "You don't have to be so sorry. Believe it or not, I actually enjoyed playing your boyfriend." Hearing that, Nina's eyes widened, and she gave a big grin. Then she dropped a bombshell. "You know, Mike, I've always had feelings for you." I blurted out, "What?" in sheer disbelief. Nina blushed at my reaction. "Do you remember our middle school reunion the other day?" "Yeah, but you weren't there, right?" "I was really disappointed when I didn't see you." Well, turns out I arrived later in the evening. At that time, because everyone was making me drink, I didn't even notice Nina's presence. It seems I missed my chance to approach you. Seeing you so drunk was really something, and I felt a bit sorry for you. But I never imagined that, even in that state, I'd find my heart still fluttering for you. "I guess I really do still have feelings for you, Mike," Nina said with a shy laugh. After that, perhaps due to her feelings of wanting to see me again, she told me that when she was approached for an arranged date, she impulsively lied, saying I was her boyfriend. That's why, when I previously asked her why she mentioned my name, she felt embarrassed, fearing I'd realize her feelings for me. She quickly looked away and answered, "Just because." Apparently, her face turned beet red at that moment. "You know, I think you and my dad have very similar personalities," she said. "What? Me and your dad?" I was taken aback by her unexpected comment. "Well, like how he's always fussing over others. Remember when I had a cold? You brought me ice cream and took care of me." Hearing Nina's story, I did recall such an incident, but I had clumsily spilled that ice cream on the floor, causing trouble for Nina's mom. Yet Nina cheerfully pointed out that my clumsy side is just like her dad's. The reason Nina came today was to propose that I work at her father's place, given the inconvenience she had caused. Being in sales, I had some familiarity with real estate, which aligned with the job. The salary sounded quite appealing, promising a brighter future than my current position. "But are you sure me working there is fine?" I asked. "It's fine, actually. I told my dad about our fake relationship." "Wait, seriously?" I was stunned. However, from what Nina shared, her father wasn't really mad about being deceived. Instead, he seemed to feel guilty for neglecting Nina's feelings and prematurely arranging a date for her. He also felt bad about causing me trouble, and offering me a job was his idea, she said. "I'm truly grateful for this offer. If you think I'm a fit, I'd love to work with you," I said. When I said that, Nina gave me a delighted smile. After that, I began working at Nina's father's place. At the same time, I started seeing Nina more often, and before we knew it, we were dating. One day, Nina's father asked me, "Are you two officially together now?" "Well, we are seeing each other, yes," I replied. "I see. There's no end to the men wanting to date my daughter. Oh boy, what a hassle," he said. Then Nina's father turned to me and said, "If someone comes around again, I might ask you to play her boyfriend again." He said it with a joking tone and grinned. It felt like the first time I saw a smile on Nina's father. Seeing that smile made me believe he had accepted my relationship with Nina. Oh yeah, there was this guy named Steve who was trying to get me transferred out. It seems Nina's father mentioned something about it to the CEO. Apparently, that led to Steve being transferred to a branch in a rural place like Nebraska. The CEO, with a slightly frustrated look, responded to Nina's father, who jokingly said, "Sorry for poaching your best employee." He then mentioned that he'd make sure Steve got some retraining. Hearing that story lifted a weight off my shoulders. Later on, Nina and I got married. But to be honest, my life story feels like a mess. Being asked to play the part of a boyfriend for the childhood friend of the CEO's daughter, only to find out that her matchmaker's dad was the boss I couldn't stand. Then right when I was about to be transferred out of spite by the boss, my childhood friend turned up at my place. Turns out she had feelings for me all along. I ended up working for her dad's company and eventually marrying her. It sounds like something straight out of a rom-com in a young adult novel. This kind of cliché plot? I bet it wouldn't get any traction. Publishers would surely be in the red with this story. But let me just say it. I'm happy, and marrying my childhood friend is just the best.